celebrating 37 years of educating, inspiring, and engaging Florida's leaders.
Stay informed about the race for Florida's next governor and your local community with Florida's newspapers in print, mobile, and online. Florida Press Association members are dedicated to bringing you the news you want and need. Be in the know. Read a newspaper.
I can be the key to a greener planet.
I can be the solution to a smarter world.
I can nurse a community back to health.
I can rise above in any industry.
I can reach my full potential
with an affordable bachelor's or associate's degree
without a lifetime of debt.
I can earn my degree on campus, online, and on my schedule.
I can with Broward College.
We've all heard the phrase, eat local, shop local, give local. Why is this so desirable? Because we live local. Cities are where we feel the impact, taste the difference, see the beauty. Celebrate what makes your community unique. Celebrate local.
The Claude Pepper Foundation and the Claude Pepper Center, helping older citizens to enhance their lives.
This is Decision 2018 Before You Vote, the Florida gubernatorial debate. Now, here's your moderator, WPBF 25 news anchor, Todd McDermott.
It's like, you guys didn't see the marching band come through? All right, we are back. If the audience would take their seats, it's been a lively first half hour. Let's get right to the next question. This is for you, Mr. Gillum. Your campaign website says President Trump's attacks on cities friendly to immigrants must end, and we must, quote, remove the immoral family separation policies. You want to replace Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE. The question is, do you support sanctuary cities in the state of Florida? Would you refuse cooperation with federal agents if more immigrant children are separated from their parents at the border?
Yeah, so first off, there are no sanctuary cities in the state of Florida, and there's also no definition in this state for a sanctuary city. We believe that we are a nation in a state of borders. We also believe that we're a nation in a state of values, where we don't separate babies, put them in cages to separate them from their mothers. Immigration and Border Control has an important job to do, and we ought to empower them to do that job, which is why we propose moving the agency inside of the Department of Justice, which obviously already oversees 4 agencies, so that they can do the job of ensuring that rapists and murderers aren't coming into the United States, make sure that sex traffickers aren't coming into the United States, intercept the fentanyl that's coming in by containers from Asia into our communities and ending up in our city streets. I believe in borders here in the United States, but I believe that our mission has been diverted toward taking away breastfeeding babies from their mothers, and that is inconsistent with the American way.
Mr. Gillum, thank you. Mr. DeSantis, we've got this caravan of people coming to the southern border again, seeking political asylum. It's a big news story right now. They're in Mexico. You're on record as saying you don't approve of the family separation policy. How will you respond as governor if the federal policy of taking kids from their parents and bringing those children here to Florida to be held continues?
Well, look, I mean, I have to see what my options are, but here's what I would say. Andrew says there's no sanctuary cities in Florida, and that may be true, but that's going to change if he's governor. I mean, he will support sanctuary cities. He said he will not cooperate with Donald Trump's ICE, and that to me is just absolutely outrageous. I mean, he hates Trump so much, he's political posturing, that if we have a criminal illegal that serves a prison sentence and there's an ICE detainer on that individual so that we can get them in federal custody and send them home, Andrew doesn't want to, he won't commit to cooperating. I will cooperate. I will get that criminal out of our state and out of our country. And here's the thing. Why would you allow your dislike for the president to knowingly put communities at risk? To have mothers who may have their sons or daughters harmed by somebody. That is just wrong. We have to protect Floridians
Mr. DeSantis,
first.
thank you
and
very
that's
much.
what I'll do as governor.
To be clear, that was a question to you, so I gave you more time, not the 30 seconds. However, Mr. Gillum, 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
Yeah, sure. So again, I said this before, Mr. DeSantis has far too many degrees not to get it. But yet again tonight, he shows that he doesn't get it. Under no circumstance would I let someone who has committed a crime in our community, in our state, get away with the committal of a crime. They will be adjudicated through the normal judicial process and held fully responsible. But what we also said is we're not going to criminalize people off their personhood simply because you're a brown-skinned person, or you speak a language that may be of a foreign tongue to Mr. DeSantis, or you may live in a neighborhood that might include more brown people. That doesn't, in and of itself, subject you to racial profiling.
All right, sir,
that's the essential instance of what he would be promoting.
Thank you very much. Mr. DeSantis, 30 seconds to you.
So he says if someone's here illegally, they commit a crime, they should go through the justice system, obviously. But what he will not commit to is once they've served that sentence, say you're convicted of child molestation, you're here illegally, you've served your sentence, state prison, are you going to hand them over to ICE or not? He will not commit to doing that. That means that child molester convicted gets released back on the streets after serving the sentence, and guess what? That child molester will reoffend, and someone's son or daughter in Florida will end up paying the price. It's true.
Shame on you.
The truth hurts.
I'm sorry. This is too important a claim, and again, it is consistent with the way in which Mr. DeSantis
go ahead and let him speak. I'll give you time.
Has run his campaign. And in my opinion, first of all, that would never happen. If you commit a crime like that, you will be deported from the United States.
You will cooperate?
We will absolutely cooperate with any federal order that comes down into this state and into any county, because that's the law of the land. But more importantly, when you're running for governor, the first thing you ought to have to do is to level honestly with the people. You've got ads on television that are completely false. They've been ranked completely false. How can we expect you to be honest with the people of the state of Florida if not here on this stage? You can be honest with them about my record or your record. You're disqualified, in my opinion, from the office of governor.
Mr. DeSantis.
Andrew's the one who lied to the people of Florida on Sunday night about accepting a gift from an undercover FBI agent. He's the one who lied. About the Costa Rica luxury trip. He's the one who was with the lobbyists. He's the one who did all this. And now the documents come out. They show he was lying. And now he's trying to say he apologizes. He's just apologizing because he got caught. He's not apologizing because he did anything wrong.
All right. No. I will ask again if we would stop the applause. Go ahead, Mr. Gillum.
Yes,
now I think we can hear you.
I mean, unfortunately, the theatrics are on full display. Mr. DeSantis could calm down. We're not going anywhere. And let's just talk about what the truth of the matter is. If he wants to talk about receipts, not a Hamilton ticket, but $145,000 of taxpayer money, why won't you release those receipts? Where is the evidence of where you went and how our money was spent to be a junket for you to go to New York and hang out in faux news and friends?
We'll let you answer that, and then we'll move on.
So both Andrew and I have received money to travel with the federal government. The difference is I received my money legally and through my congressional office to travel from Florida to Washington and back again for 6 years, twice a week. Andrew got travel money from the federal government because it was from an undercover FBI agent who is investigating him for corruption.
Release the receipts. It's that simple. My receipts are public. My receipts have been made public. Mr. DeSantis, unfortunately, has still refused to make public his receipts. We're talking about a couple of $100 compared to $145,000.
I believe Mr. DeSantis has pointed out that those records are available.
They are not available, and he has refused to release them. That is the fact.
6 years worth of congressional travel. Every single member of Congress in Florida does the same thing. 100% legal.
I would like
he didn't do it. He violated the law. It's a big, big difference. I know what's right, and I follow the law.
And Mr. DeSantis, I'm going to direct this next question to you. On live TV in August, on the first day of the general election campaign, you said of Andrew Gillum's run for governor, quote, the last thing we need to do is to monkey this up by embracing a socialist agenda. Fox News quickly disavowed your words, saying, quote, they do not condone the language. Now, you called some of this response absurd. You've made appearances at 4 of David Horowitz's Freedom Center events. Again, 4 separate times, 4 speeches. Among some of Mr. Horowitz's statements, quoting here, "This country's only serious race war is against whites." You know, I'll ask the questions. Okay. It's not a McCarthy game, and I'm giving it. Wait for the question, sir. Okay. He also said, if blacks are oppressed in America, why isn't there a black exodus? Now, in 2015, in your speech before the Freedom Center, you said of Mr. Horowitz, "David has done such a great work, and I've been an admirer. I've been to these conferences in the past, and I've been a big admirer of an organization that shoots straight, tells the American people the truth, and is standing up for the right thing." Those are his words. Here's my question.
He had not even made those statements then.
Yes, he had, sir. The first statement was made many years ago.
I mean, how the hell am I supposed to know every single statement somebody makes? Here's the deal. Let me just say this straight up. You know, I've lived my life, whether it's athletics, whether it's military, whether it's serving as a prosecutor. You know, when I was downrange in Iraq, we worked together as a team regardless of race. We had the American flag on our arm. We wore the same uniform, and we fought for the country. When I was a prosecutor, I stood up for victims of every race, color, and creed. That's the only way to do it in our country. It's something I believe in, and as governor, I will represent all the people. Everyone will get a fair shake. But I am not going to bow down to the altar of political correctness. I'm going to not let the media smear me like they like to do with so many other people. Sir, I'm certainly not going to take anything from Andrew Gillum, who's endorsed the Dream Defenders, which says Israel is an apartheid state, and which says the police and prisons have no place in justice.
Mr. Gillum, wait for the applause, then go. And Mr. DeSantis, I'll point out, I wish you would have waited for the question, because I had a question, and it's not what you think it is. Mr. Gillum, I'll give you a chance to respond now.
Well, let me first say, my grandmother used to say, a hit dog will holler. And it hollered through this room. Mr. DeSantis has spoken. Hey, first of all, he's got neo-Nazis helping him out in the state. He has spoken at racist conferences. He's accepted a contribution and would not return it from someone who referred to the former president of the United States as a Muslim, N-I-G-G-E-R. When asked to return that money, he said no. He's using that money to now fund negative ads. Now, I'm not calling Mr. DeSantis a racist. I'm simply saying the racists believe he's a racist.
Mr. DeSantis, if I would ask the audience to please let Mr. DeSantis now respond.
The conference I attended was keynoted by a Medal of Honor recipient named Clint Romeshay. It was not a racial conference. That is an absolute lie. And I'm not going to sit here and take this nonsense from a guy like Andrew Gillum, who always plays the victim, who's going out and attacking, aligning himself with groups who attack our men and women in law enforcement, attack our military. He still will not disavow the Dream Defenders. None of these things people are saying that I endorse. He endorsed the Dream Defenders, and they endorsed him, and that is wrong.
Mr. Gillum.
Yes. Yeah, happy to speak on that. So first of all, he continues to attempt to manipulate my record to mean that I'm against law and order. First of all, under my leadership as the mayor of the city of Tallahassee, we hired 50 new law enforcement officers. We connected those law enforcement officers hand in glove with the community through community policing. In my city, we're experiencing a 5-year low in our crime rate. He described in the last debate a city run amok, and the political fact had to correct him on that as well. What Mr. DeSantis shows is he simply has no relationship with the truth. He doesn't have it here as a candidate, and he certainly wouldn't have it as the governor, but we won't have to worry about that because we'll retire him on November 6th and keep it moving.
I'd like to move on if we could.
30.
I'll give you 30. I'll give you 30, and then let's.
Well, no, let's.
Gentlemen, I don't want to make this the issue for the rest of the debate if we could.
Here's the thing about Tallahassee crime. The facts matter. Last year, Tallahassee, under the Gillum administration, had the highest number of murders in the history of the city. The guy running to succeed him as mayor right now was Andrew's former chief of staff. He's sending out flyers saying, last year we had the most murders in history. We need change. We need leadership. Yeah, because Andrew failed on that. Tallahassee is one of the most crime-ridden cities in Florida. Bar none, them are the facts.
I would suggest the congressman might want to reconsider whether he wants to be governor. The governor's mansion's in Tallahassee. I would hate for you to be heard.
Yeah, but you won't be.
It is. Because if we were to believe your vision of the city, which is completely inaccurate, the city of Tallahassee,
number of murders?
City of Tallahassee is on a pace to be at a 20-year low in our crime rate, and we did that by at the same time arresting fewer people. The city of Tallahassee works hand in glove with law enforcement, and that's why we are ranked an all-American city. And this week we're just ranked a #1 place to raise a family. And that's the kind of city we live in.
Mr. Gillum, thank you. Mr. DeSantis, thank you. We'll move on now. Our next question is from Anthony Mann from the Sun Sentinel.
Mr. DeSantis, Florida bans felons who have completed their sentences from voting. What's your position on the proposed constitutional amendment that would automatically restore voting rights to felons who have completed their sentences except for convicted murderers and sex offenders?
I think it's wrong to automatically restore rights to felons who've committed very serious crimes. Now, I want people to be redeemed. I want people to be able to show, but you've got to prove that you're getting back with the law. You've got to prove. Many felons reoffend, and I think it's wrong to automatically give them a free pass to be able to vote without them showing that they can be back in our community. I also think it's very important, just as a former prosecutor, we've dealt with law enforcement. I'm committed to having safe communities. The fact of the matter is Andrew's making jokes about Tallahassee when they had the highest number of murders in their history last year. I don't think it's funny for those murder victims and their families. I don't think it's funny that you make light of crime, because I know how devastating that can be to victims' families. I've stood with families who've had their lives turned upside down by some very, very bad people. And I think we need to protect our communities. I don't want to go down the road where crime is spiraling out of control. And so I want people to be able to earn their way back, but you got to earn it. You don't get it for free.
And Anthony Mann, you'd like to address the question back to Mr. Gillum?
Mr. Gillum, what's your position on the proposed constitutional amendment?
Absolutely.
If it doesn't pass, would you continue the Scott-era policy, or would you go back to the policy under Governor Oct?
Yeah, so Mr. DeSantis has never had the responsibility or the obligation of leading a community through a crime or helping to fix a crime problem. So he wouldn't recognize that the #1 way to reduce crime in a community is to reduce the level of recidivism. One of the things we can do to help with the recidivism rate is for these 1.7 million individuals who don't have their right to vote. The constitutional amendment doesn't give it back to everybody. But if you have done your time and you've paid your debt to society, you ought to be able to re-enter society, have your constitutional right to vote and your right to work here in the state. Because if they don't have the opportunity to make a living for themselves, you often find people reoffending.
Mr. Gillum, that's time. Thank you very much. I want to go to Isadora Rangel of Florida Today Now.
Mr. Gillum, during a CNN debate on Sunday, you vowed, quote, to hold these folks who are the biggest polluters accountable. The powerful sugar industry has often lobbied against environmental proposals in Tallahassee. Your longtime friend and advisor, Sean Pittman, lobbies on behalf of Florida Crystals, one of the largest sugar companies in the state, among other interests. You have also said you won't demonize the workers who rely on the sugar industry. How can voters trust that you will hold this powerful industry accountable?
Well, they can begin by looking at my record on the environment and energy, and the fact that I've been endorsed by nearly every major environmental organization out there. The same week that Donald Trump pulled out of the Paris Accord, in my city, we broke ground on a 120-acre solar farm, tripling the amount of solar energy that we produce. Under the Rick Scott administration, we have taken away the word protection out of the Department of Environmental Protection. Mr. DeSantis and Mr. Rick Scott negate whether or not global warming and climate change is actually a real thing. So what Florida voters will first need to know about me is when I win this race for governor, they'll have a governor who believes in science. And we will hold all of the major polluters in this state, to include big sugar, to include big ag, but also to include the out-of-control development that is happening north of Lake Okeechobee, so that we can get some real standards back into this state and clean up this blue-green algae that's flowing out of the east and the west side of the state of Florida. I will make that commitment because that is consistent with my value set.
All right, and you have a follow-up, Isadora? Is that correct?
I have a question for Mr. DeSantis.
Same topic.
Yeah, on the environment. You support the reservoir south of Lake Okeechobee, which many experts agree will reduce discharges east and west. However, the reservoir doesn't do anything to curb pollution going into the lake and into tributaries that end up in the lagoon and the St. Lucie River. Over the last 8 years under the Scott administration, we have seen a path of deregulation, deep cuts to water management districts. So my question to you is, will you reverse that path of deregulation in Florida?
So I have a very strong environmental plan because the water is our lifeblood. We have to protect the environment Floridians enjoy. It affects quality of life. It affects health and safety. All the drinking water is affected by having clean water, restoring the Everglades. Our economy is affected by it because if you don't have clean water, we lose our status as a tourist destination. Could end up being a high-tax state because we don't get the revenue we need. So I'm committed to this. My vision is very simple. People on the water management districts, they're not going to be a stooge of an industry. They're going to understand what is happening on those coastal communities. I'm also going to have very good water quality standards because you're right that what goes into the lake's important. But here's the thing. I have the vision, but you also have the leadership to finally get this done. And I'm the only candidate who fought Big Sugar and lived to tell about it. They came after me in my primary with millions and millions of dollars, attacking me every which way. They called me everything but a child of God. And yet I stuck to my principles because I know it's the right thing for Florida. And so I will win the race, and this will be a top priority for me. We will get this done.
Mr. Gillum, if you could keep it to 30 seconds, please.
Sure, because I think it's important that you measure people by what they've done, not just what they say. The saying goes, the proof is always in the eating, right? That you got to test it all the way out. And in Mr. DeSantis' case, he ranked a number 3 out of 100 by environmental agencies in Washington, D.C., based off his congressional record. I've got friends who did worse in high school and never got a 3. He's at the bottom when it comes to the ranking. He's taken over a couple of $100,000 from the biggest polluters of this state. Mr. DeSantis is not going to stand up to Big Sugar or big polluters because he's wholly owned by them.
That's time. Mr. Gillum, thank you very much. I have a question for Mr. DeSantis now. The state passed new gun control measures after the massacre of 17 people not far from here at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland. You're on record that you would have vetoed that bill. Why reject raising the age to 21 to buy any firearm in the state of Florida? Why refuse to require the 3-day waiting period to buy a rifle? And why not ban the sale of bump stocks, which allow a rifle to mimic a machine gun?
My wife, Casey, and I have 2 young kids, and so safety, particularly in schools, is a top priority for me. I want our kids to be safe, and so I'm going to work with people like Andy Pollack, who lost his daughter Meadow at Parkland, and we're going to fix the problem of school security. You can take that to the bank. I think the way to keep our community safe is obviously you got to work with law enforcement, not against law enforcement, and you need to identify those individuals who should not have access to firearms. The blanket ban on the restriction, that's going to get struck down in the courts. It's a constitutionally enumerated right. You always got to do it in a way that's precise. And so that is what I will do. Focus on these people, make sure that they're off the streets. And the problem that I saw with Parkland was a failure at multiple levels of government, at the local level, at the federal level with the FBI. And yet here we stand. Nobody has been held accountable yet. When I'm governor, we are going to bring accountability in, and I'm going to make sure that folks are held accountable when they drop the ball.
Mr. DeSantis, thank you. Mr. Gillum, would you have signed that bill?
What I would have done is push for a stronger bill. And Mr. DeSantis should acknowledge he's endorsed by the NRA, another entity of which he is wholly accountable and owned by. When I took on the NRA, they sued me and drugged me through court for 2 years, all because we had a city ordinance which said you could not shoot guns in city parks. When we win this race, it'll be simple. It's not a threat to the Second Amendment. If you want to own the power of God at your waist belt, you ought to have a background check. If you are a domestic violence abuser convicted, you shouldn't have a gun that you can snuff out the lives of your loved ones. When our parents drop our kids off at school, we should have an expectation that we will be able to pick them up alive.
That's time, Mr. DeSantis.
Indeed. Well, actually, Andrew he's the most hostile candidate to the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens. During the primary, he said he had a criteria of what he would ban. It would ban virtually all handguns that are sold in the state of Florida. He said we'd get them off the streets, which to me says he's going to engage in confiscation. So he will not protect your rights. I'll stand with law-abiding citizens, but public safety is going to be number one. We're going to work with law enforcement to make sure our community's safe. I don't want to see cities like Tallahassee have record number of murders.
Mr. Gillum.
Listen, our proposal was very simple. It is, if you want to shoot off a gun that can fire 60 bullets in 60 seconds, you ought to join the military. That turning our streets and our communities, our neighborhoods, and in our schools into war zones is unacceptable. It is no coincidence that Post nightclub would happen here. No coincidence that what happened at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas and the everyday gun violence that pervades far too many communities all across the state of Florida. We've got to check the NRA. They will not run roughshod over the state of Florida. And there are common and decent solutions that we can employ to make that happen without offending the Second Amendment.
Gentlemen, you're not going to believe this, but we've approached the time for closing statements. Now, by draw, and I'm glad that we have the time, you'll get your time on this. And Mr. DeSantis, by draw, your closing statements go first.
Well, it's great to be here. I want to acknowledge my wife, Casey. We have 2 kids under 2. We're working hard. We love them. I love her, and I couldn't do this without her. I'm Ron DeSantis. I'm an Iraq veteran. I'm a former prosecutor, and I am on a mission to protect Florida's future. We've got to protect Florida's economic momentum. We can take it to the next level. We can bring in high-paying jobs and grow high-paying jobs here, but you got to keep taxes low. You can't go in the direction like Andrew wants to do of tax increases. I'll also protect the environment Floridians enjoy. We will solve the water quality problem, we'll restore the Everglades, and stop the toxic algae discharges. We've got to do it. That's just who we are as Floridians. I'll also protect our communities, and that means working with law enforcement, not aligning with groups like Andrew has who are hostile to law enforcement. The police need to know we have their backs. They're risking their lives for us. The least we can do is stand by them. And finally, I'll make sure to do it with honor and integrity. As a naval officer, we always put honor, courage, and commitment first. I'm not a career politician. I'm someone who's gotten into this and tried to stand by taxpayers every step of the way. As governor, I'll stand with you, the hardworking taxpayers of Florida, and I will protect Florida's future.
All right, Mr. DeSantis, thank you. I want to make sure that, Mr. Gillum, you get all your time, so if the audience would let you go ahead with your closing statements.
Well, I'll simply say thank you again for the evening. I've thoroughly enjoyed the opportunity to have a conversation about the vision for the future of this state. As some of you all know, I am from Miami. I grew up in an area called Richmond Heights. Because my mother and father both had blue-collar jobs, we would get up early and sleep a little bit longer at my grandparents' house before they would get us up and ready for the day. My grandmother had a dual ritual. One, she would anoint our head with oil. It was called blessing oil, and make sure that we would be okay as we traveled through the day. And second, she would say, boy, go to school, mind your teachers, get your lesson, and one day bring it home. In Trump's America, so many of us have forgotten that we're in this thing together, that the only way we can climb higher and further is to be on our neighbors' necks, on their backs, and to suppress their own potential. Well, we have an opportunity on November 6th to send a loud, unapologetic, and convincing message that common sense and decency still prevails right here in the state of Florida. I'm proud to be the mayor of Tallahassee, but I will greet you next as the next governor of the great state of Florida. Thank you.
And I expected that. Gentlemen, I want to offer my personal thank you for being part of this. I have 15 more questions. If you'd like to hang around, we could do another 3 hours. We don't have the time, but I want to thank both of you as public servants, both running for this office to lead the state of Florida, for being here tonight, participating in this. My heartfelt thanks again to both of you. And thanks to you as well. I can't hear myself. The audience has enjoyed this debate. Make sure to vote. Election Day is November 6th. I think it's been a great night for American democracy. Good night.
What makes a great morning?
How about South Florida's certified most accurate forecast to plan your day? Traffic alerts to get you to work and school on time.
Breaking news impacting your community, family, and day.
Plus, that special feeling when you find a morning team you enjoy spending time with. So, what makes a great morning?
You'll know it when you spend it with us.
Your morning, your team. Watch WPBF 25 News mornings every day.
Some people say that one vote doesn't matter. Let me assure you, every single vote matters. So consider early voting, avoid the lines on November 6th, make your voice heard now. Please, get out and vote.
Looking for a Medicare Advantage plan? Trust Simply Healthcare and start living a Simply life.
With Simply Healthcare, you can count on benefits such as zero copays, prescription drug coverage, enhanced dental benefits, and more. Simply Healthcare also offers a large network of doctors and specialists you can trust, and a dedicated concierge team to guide you at every step.
Choose a plan that is simply designed for you. Choose Simply Healthcare so you can live a Simply life. Call us today.
I'm Kelsey Grammer. My dad was gunned down at his home at the age of 38. 6 years later, my sister Karen was brutally raped and murdered. She was 18. When my father's killer was released, I found out through the National Enquirer. It seemed like a cruel joke. In my sister's case, I have been allowed a voice in the parole hearings of her killers, but that's not always true in Florida. Amendment 6 gives crime victims and their families a voice in the process and the equal rights they deserve. Please vote yes on Amendment 6.
We are the partners of Lytle, Ryder, Smith, Ivey, and Fronrath. Experienced, board-certified civil trial attorneys.
Litigating cases in and throughout the state of Florida is what we do best.
In the courtroom or in the community, we're here to help.